Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T, and I hope you're all doing well today. One person whose name keeps coming up in the Dylan Rounds case, but who few seem to know much about, is Ed Harshbarger. He's the man who, for a time, leased the property that the grain shed is located on. It is also in Harshbarger's abandoned trailer that Jim Brenner resided when Dylan Rounds went missing. From what I understand, the .22 caliber rifle that was part of Jim Brenner's firearms stash originally belonged to Harshbarger. You may recall that farmhand Don Hatley agreed to safeguard Brenner's guns when Brenner asked him to do so after being interviewed by law enforcement post Dylan's disappearance. Hatley secretly decided to keep the .22 rifle for himself when he saw it because allegedly Ed Harshbarger owes him money. More and more, it's sounding like Harshbarger is a person who borrowed a lot of cash from locals with promises to pay it back, only to renege on the paying it back part. I say this because private investigator Jim Terry played a recorded call that he had with Chase Venstra's eldest child, Bridger. I believe Bridger is around 18 years old. FYI, Bridger's mother, 35-year-old Heather Elizabeth Campbell, passed away in July of 2021, allegedly from a drug overdose. My heart goes out to this kid and to his siblings. Their mother is gone, and now their father is in jail, and he's looking at multiple felony charges. It sounds as if Bridger has had to grow up really fast. In talking to Jim Terry, Bridger was very protective of his younger siblings. Now, Bridger comes into the Dylan Rounds case, one, just by virtue of being Chase Venstra's son, and two, Bridger worked for Dylan last summer over a 3-day period on Dylan's farm in Lucerne, Utah. In his telecon with Jim Terry, Bridger referred to Ed Harshbarger with two very telling nicknames. They are OPM, which stands for Other People's Money, and Oh Everybody Ed. Bridger told Jim Terry that he got the 3-day farm gig thanks to Montello local Kurt Wadsworth. Kurt introduced Bridger to Dylan. According to Bridger, last summer Kurt was cool to him. But later, the relationship changed, and Bridger is now calling Kurt a word that starts with a D and rhymes with Mick. Just FYI, Bridger says the Wadsworth have the most prominent name in Montello. He also said that a lot of bad SHIT goes down there. Kurt Wadsworth, who according to Bridger is quite short, Bridger jokingly called him 4 feet 3 inches, allegedly once offered to pay Bridger to beat some tweaker up. Sounding like he has a good head on his shoulders, Bridger declined Kurt's offer. He also said that he doesn't know if Kurt Wadsworth and Dylan were gay and in a relationship. He didn't see any of that. He doesn't know. Bridger helped Dylan put in a water line on the farm. During those 3 days, Bridger stayed at his father, Chase Venstra's home. When asked about Dylan, Bridger had only nice things to say about the young farmer. He told Jim Terry that one of the things he and Dylan talked about when they worked on the water line was Ed Harshbarger and Harshbarger's dislike of Dylan. According to Bridger, Dylan and Harshbarger did not get on very well, but Bridger didn't explain why that was. So that leaves me to speculate. I'm wondering if the now 52-year-old Ed Harshbarger found it hard to deal with the confident 19-year-old farmer. Dylan had permission from the landowner to use the grain shed. Harshbarger was not the landowner, but instead he leased the property. Is it possible Harshbarger, like Jim Brenner, didn't like it that Dillon went above him to the landowner to get permission to use the grain shed? Was Harshbarger annoyed that Dillon would turn up with his grain truck when the weather was inclement? Perhaps Harshbarger resented that Dillon never closed that infamous gate. I don't know that that's what happened. I'm just speculating. We've heard some say that Dillon could come across as condescending at times. Dillon's own mother said he could be hard-headed like she is. Could this have been a clash of personalities down to things Harshbarger said and did? Or was it down to Dillon's behavior and attitude? The only other thing I've heard about Ed Harshbarger, other than he owes people a lot of money and he doesn't like Dillon, is that he moved to Arizona. I'm also wondering if Harshbarger is the person who gave Jim Brenner permission to live in his abandoned trailer on that grain shed property. Did Ed and Jim Brenner get along? I looked up Ed Harshbarger and discovered that he lives in another very Wild West-style outpost in Arizona. It's not in the urban sprawl of Phoenix. Rather, his new digs are nestled in a rough and tumbleweed town where rustic horse properties go hand in hand with posh haciendas, replete with saltwater pools and patios offering expansive views of the desert and those fiery crimson, orange, and yellow sunsets that the Grand Canyon State is celebrated for. Most of the properties in this town, which is about 40 minutes away from Phoenix, are set on multiple acre properties where coyotes, javelinas, bobcats, and rattlesnakes dance, howl, and slither at dusk. It's a place where a person wanting little interaction with human beings can be snug as a bug in a rug. I'm curious now to know what type of vehicle Ed drives. Stay tuned. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Now do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment.